GDP figures show that Australia's economy grew just 0.2% in the June quarter. It's the slowest pace growth since the 90s recession. So are you cutting back on spending? 133693 is at the Weekly Shop, dining out. How are you getting by? On the line is Leith Van Onselen, Chief Economist and co-founder of Macro Business and also a former economist with the Victorian Treasury. Leith, can you, in layman's terms, take me through what the figures actually mean?
Yeah, g'day, Jacqui. Look, Australia's economy, as you said, grew by 0.2% over the quarter and 1% year on year. So what it basically says is that the overall amount of economic activity in the economy grew by those amounts. Now, that was, in annual terms, as you said, the slowest since the early 90s recession. But the thing that we care about as citizens is we care about what our slice of the pie is. So the overall economic pie has grown by 1% over the past year, but Australia's population has also grown by 2.5%. And what that means is that as our slice of the economic pie has actually shrunk, and it's actually shrunk for the last 6 quarters in a row, so last 18 months and the last 7 of the last 8 quarters. So our slice of the pie, which is called per capita GDP, is now tracking 2% below where it was 2 years ago when the Albanese government entered office, which is not a great result, obviously. And the bad thing about it is most of the pain has been felt in the household sector. So the economy is basically split up between government, business and households. And households is where you and I live and everyone who's listening. And that's the thing that we care about. And the amount of household consumption actually fell by 0.8% in per capita terms over the quarter. It's now contracted for 6 straight quarters. And also household disposable income, which is how much we earn, is down 8% from peak. So we've been smashed.
So how much of this then is actually almost like a false economy? How much is immigration and, say, government handouts propping up these numbers?
Yeah, look, we've got 2 things there. So obviously, all of Australia's economic growth is coming from population growth. So as I said, per capita, we're actually going backwards.
Yeah.
And we've gone backwards by 2% over the last 2 years. So it's population growth. But the other thing also, Jacqui, is we're kind of running 2 different economies at the moment, apart from that, whereby the public sector grew by 1.5% in the June quarter, whereas the private sector, which is everything else, fell by 0.6%. So effectively, the economy's been driven by 1, population growth, and 2, public spending. And the amount of public spending as a share of GDP has actually hit a record high in the June quarter. So it hit 27.3% of GDP, and that's versus a long-run average of 22.5%. So effectively, we've got an economy where the private sector is getting absolutely smashed. The household sector is getting absolutely smashed, and we're only growing because of extreme population growth as well as government spending.
And Jim Chalmers warned this week that the 13 interest rate rises was smashing the economy because we've got this disconnect now between the government and the Reserve Bank as well.
Yeah, and it certainly is. It's certainly smashing the private sector economy, so which is, or the household sector, which is where you and I live and where everyone who's listening lives, and that's what we care about. So, as a result, we've got falling spending and especially discretionary spending. So most of the cutbacks that in spending have actually been in the discretionary space. So that's all the stuff that you'd like to have, whereas the essential spending, rents, utilities, insurance and those sorts of things are still tracking okay. It's all the other areas that you'd like to have. Those are the areas that are getting absolutely smashed. And also, obviously, we've had a huge decline in household disposable income. So that's down by about 8% from its peak a couple of years ago. So, and it's actually one of the largest declines in the world. So Australian households have been hit harder than just about anywhere else in the world.
So what do you foresee? I know you're an economist and it's difficult to predict, but what does the future hold over the next, say, 6 months?
Look, I think it's we should get a tiny bounce in household spending and household income purely because of stage 3 tax cuts, which will filter through. But it's still going to be a very depressed economy, and I still think we're going to have this per capita recession, which is currently the longest on record, dating back to the 1970s. It's not the deepest, but it's the longest. Is going to continue for a while yet. It's not a great sign, and unfortunately, the economy is only growing through this very historically high immigration and public spending.
Leith Van Onselen is the Chief Economist and co-founder of Macro Business. Leith, always appreciate your thoughts. Okay.